Well, joining us now to talk more about this historic win for Donald Trump is Michael Hagen, Associate Professor at Temple University. Good morning, Michael. Thank you for being with us so bright and early.
Thank you for having me.
Can imagine you've been up all night, pretty much like
most of the night, yes,
as well.
right.
Let's listen in to, again, Donald Trump taking the podium in New York just hours ago.
I've just received a call from Secretary Clinton. She congratulated us, it's about us, on our victory.
Well, there, Donald Trump saying that Hillary Clinton had finally, called him and congratulated what he called us. I'm just going to start with just how are people feeling this morning? You think you were up all night, I was up all night, the gentleman we just heard from on the air at the Art Museum steps. There's going to be shock for two reasons, I think. Some folks saying they're surprisingly shocked that he won so big, so many places, and then shocked that others are saying Hillary Clinton could not pull out this win with Michigan, Wisconsin in play to the very end. How do you think people are they're going to need some time?
Oh, that's for sure. One of the problems is the polls, for the most part, were wrong. Most polls, most predictors, most people who were trying to forecast how this was going to come out, forecast a Clinton victory. So that is part of the surprise. I think actually social media contribute to the surprise that a lot of people are feeling. Most people are in a position these days where they hear mostly news that's consistent with what they believe and how they feel already, so they can be surprised by
that. And there's our map right there. Again, we'll be updating information throughout the morning, but look at those red states. Now, we knew this was going to be very close in a number of states, but were you so surprised? They were literally looking at Wayne County, in Michigan, and then for Pennsylvania, we saw some flow there at the very end of the night into the early hours, but it could not be pulled out by Hillary Clinton there. At this point, what does this tell us? Not only that the polls were either grossly inaccurate or didn't track this, because this is potentially very different for us, but also that these were states that are swing states, and there's a whole different type of movement. Is that demographics? What is that all about?
Well, I think you have to see this as a national wave sort of election where folks all over the country who supported Trump came out and voted in larger numbers than were anticipated.
So is the issue then turnout? Could this have been different if Latinos or African Americans would have voted differently? And there's a look at the popular vote right now.
Right.
That's as of about 4:30.
Right. So it is, though the map makes it look as if Trump won going away and the electoral vote is very much in his favor, in terms of the popular vote, it was a very, very close election, and many of those battleground states were very, very close. It just turned out that Trump won nearly all of them. Clinton was able to hold on to very few of them, and in fact lost Michigan, which was not imagined to be a real battleground state by anybody outside of the Trump campaign.
Was a real surprise how it came down to Michigan, and I believe Wisconsin, where she had not gone. So,
right.
Which was very telling too. Bringing people together, looking at the faces of those on the Clinton side in that camp last night in New York, it was really shocked. That's Podesta talking there about telling people to go home, and they were literally in shock as they sat there for hours, with some people even leaving.
It's been a long, difficult, anxiety-ridden campaign, and people on both sides are going to have trouble putting it behind them. And regardless of who won, we all knew that the day after the campaign, the day after the election was going to be the start of a healing process. At least we hope it's a healing process. It's going to take a long time to complete.
All right, that's a very good note to end on, but we'll just be beginning with you. You'll be with us throughout the morning. We're going to dissect this, take a look at it, and debrief some more. And
very good.
Talk about how folks feel. Thank you so much, Michael. Again, there, Trump taking that podium just hours ago. This went into the wee hours of the morning. Michael, you've been following this with us all morning long and following the election. Let's talk about the transition of power and how does this really work? On that stage with him was Chris Christie, among others. He is heading up the transition team. What are the steps that happen? And is this even a way to bring people together when a number of people have said there's racial lines drawn and divisiveness?
Well, the formal process actually began way back in May, even before Trump had received his party's nomination when Christie was named head of the transition team. The process is quite elaborate. There are lots of people involved. They're trying to choose people to serve in a Trump administration at this point, and certainly one of their big challenges is going to be to reach out to folks who feel like they were in some way offended or at least left out of Trump's rhetoric during the campaign. That's going to be one of the big challenges they face when they take office.
Is that likely to happen, however, when a lot of his constituents have said they want to be anti-establishment and they want something different? So now you've got the other, 50% of the country or what have you to also, consider.
Nobody's doing a terrific job of predicting Mr. Trump's behavior, so it's a little difficult to say how this is going to work. But once he takes office, he's going to have to pick and choose a few issues on which he can act immediately.
Any folks you think will be a part of that team?
I certainly expect Chris Christie to be part of it. I would expect Mayor Giuliani would be part of it. I wouldn't be surprised if Newt Gingrich is a part of that team.
Yeah, they've been strong supporters of him, traveling with him the whole time. When you come back, we're going to be talking more about what a Trump presidency looks like for folks in the tri-state area. Gun rights, reproductive rights, gay marriage, and more. We'll talk about that with you coming up. Michael Hagen, Associate Professor at Temple University. You've been with us all morning long. Thanks once again. I want to talk now about individual rights. Let's look, though, at the popular vote and what this really means versus, as we say, the Electoral College. If you look at those numbers right there, they are pretty much dead heat within a, what is it, a tenth of a percent. However, how does that translate into votes? And you said this is about also geography versus demographics.
It's about geography. It's about the way the votes are distributed. So Trump has a lock on the Electoral College at this point, even though he's only leading in the popular vote by 100,000, 200,000 votes. The reverse was the case for actually, the same was the case in 2000. Let me remember all the way back to 2000.
Me too.
Al Gore won the popular vote by 500,000 votes, but lost the electoral vote.
What does this mean for individual rights? We're talking about things, you know, when it comes to Pennsylvania and the State House, Governor Wolf making decisions, and New Jersey's governor will be in place making those decisions, and residents here, gun ownership, reproductive rights. We're talking about, you know, rights that affect people in so many different ways. Gay marriage. What does this mean for you as an individual under a Trump administration?
Well, I think it means a lot, and I think frequently of people who say they're not going to participate in an election because it doesn't really matter who the president is. This is going to make an enormous difference. Trump has promised to roll back a lot of the what President Obama regards as his achievements and move the country in another direction. I think it's quite likely that there will be new federal action to regulate immigration. I imagine the health care, I'm quite confident the health care Act will be rolled back.
Affordable Care Act will be rolled back as well.
Right, yeah.
We'll talk with you once again. We'll get into drill down on those subjects as well once more. This just in, President Obama has invited Donald Trump to meet with him at the White House tomorrow. Now, according to the White House, President Obama called Donald Trump early this morning to congratulate him on that win. That meeting will reportedly discuss, of course, the presidential transition. Joining us to talk more about this is Michael Hagen, Associate Professor at Temple University. Thank you once again. This is standard operating procedure, but this is going to be very interesting, no doubt.
That's for sure. A couple of weeks ago, it was a matter of some conversation about whether the transition might be a peaceful one or not be a peaceful one. It's one of the hallmarks of American democracy that power is handed off from one president to the next, regardless of party, and it's good to see that that's going to happen here.
And that's going to happen. So the tone is starting to change a bit. If you listen to Donald Trump taking the podium last night, he did talk about, you know, kind of representing all people as he was there in New York. But again, many people feeling like they don't want to also accept that he could change from some of the rhetoric and tone that he had, particularly African Americans, Latinos, talking about will that be genuine at all. So still a lot of work to do in this transition to try to get them to support him, and whether or not they feel he would be honest and just.
It may be critical what Secretary Clinton has to say today if she comes out and gives a speech, and what other leaders of the Democratic Party have to say about the way things ought to proceed.
And kind of handing that off to say, listen, the water will be okay, things are fine, support or be cautious,
right.
Or keep the pressure on. It will be interesting to hear what Clinton has to say as well. As we look to Washington, D.C., and that impacts Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware, federal funding, money for special programs, money for things like Planned Parenthood, very quickly, this could hang in the balance now.
I expect the federal government's policies will change pretty dramatically in a variety of areas, and spending would be one of the overarching considerations, and those things will have an impact on states.
All right. Well, coming up, thank you so much. We'll keep in touch with you. More on this in the coming days, weeks. It's going to be around for a while.